around and watch the people pass me by. I often wonder what they're hiding there behind those smiles, 'cause eyes don't lie. Why do we feel we're all alone in this universe, squeezing so blood from the stone? God, I'm so alone, we're both alone. You're doing, look around, look into their eyes. Maybe a part of you is found in there, and maybe you'll sleep tight. No one ever understands the way I'm feeling. No one ever shares that pain. It's just too revealing, so we keep it all to ourselves. Always stuck in our shells when we could lift the weight of the world. No matter where you may be tonight, you're not alone. Now you're not alone. No one ever understands the way I'm feeling. No one ever shares the pain. It's just too revealing. No one ever understands the way I'm feeling. No one ever shares that pain. It's just too revealing, so we keep it all to ourselves. Always stuck in our shells when we could lift the weight of the world.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Spreaker. Glad to be here. This is The Courage to Stand, and that was the song by Marina V, Weight of the World, and I think it's very appropriate for the topic tonight. You know, the courage to stand, for survivors of abuse. I talk a lot about abuse. That's what I do. And, I've been talking about child abuse prevention and adult survivor issues for about 5 years now. Well, actually, a little, at 5 years for sure. And talking about human rights as a whole for about 7. And, it takes a lot of courage to stand. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and speak out against what's wrong, because it's not a popular thing to do. It's not something that people really want to hear about a lot of times. And most people tolerate it, but, some people don't understand it. And then the rest of the world is speaking out. So it does take a lot of courage to stand up for what you feel is right, and stand up and speak out against what you feel is wrong. And especially dealing with child abuse issues. Not every person who's speaking out about child abuse is, coming from a background of child abuse. Not everybody who speaks out about child abuse was abused, right? And then there are a lot of survivors that do speak out, but then there's so many survivors that can't speak out. And I mean, for whatever reason, their abusers may still be living, and they're just a fear for their lives or fear for the consequences, and it takes a lot of courage to stand. And even if a person doesn't go completely public with their story, it takes a lot of courage to get help, because the issues that surround child abuse, of any type. And so this is what I want to talk about tonight. It just takes a lot of courage to stand. And I just, as a person coming from this background, I know it's hard. And I know when I first went public with my own stuff, it was a public facing blog. I wanted people to see it, and I just was doing this blog, writing my story. And I'd write a little bit, like pretty much every night or every few nights, and it would just come out. I didn't really change it and go through and edit it. I would just put it exactly what I was wanting to say in this public blog, and it was very graphic, and detailed about the abuse that I suffered and my family suffered, and my siblings, and even about the abuse that my parents suffered. Both of my parents were abused as children, and it was not an easy thing to do. I remember, looking back at that period of time in my life, for the first time disclosing publicly, not just in secret to a friend or in private, to a good friend or something. Going public with it was, I was a bit, let's just say nervous, to talk about it. And it was hard. It really was hard. And it's not easy to tell our stories, and I see so many encouraging things today on Facebook and different, social networking sites where people are, they're standing up, and they're, developing the courage to stand up and tell their story, no matter how it is, with pictures or drawings, artwork, flashcards, not speaking, but just writing out their story and putting it on that. I saw one of those tonight where a girl was disclosing her abuse publicly on, flashcards, just writing it out. And I mean, it's whatever, whatever mediums person's going to use. I just commend everybody who does that, because it does take a lot of guts to do it. Because not only is a person, disclosing very private details of their personal life that are very painful, but the issue is they're quite often alienating people around them, which would be any family members that may have attempted to be of some help to them over the years. Any family members. I mean, that's not my case, because my family, we all just grew up in this abusive environment, and nobody was really trying to help anybody. But I'm sure there are situations where people may have had someone in the family, whether it's a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or grandma or somebody, who was there for them, and then once they went public with their story, then that person just doesn't want to have anything to do with them because they've spilled the beans on the family garbage, And it's hard for people to make that decision. And I would never, I've always, even like on my other shows on Blog Talk Radio for the last 5 years, said, you have to be really sure about what you're doing when you have to be really sure of the consequences. I know that when I started out speaking publicly about my own story and stuff, I thought about it. I thought about it before I did it. I thought about the consequences, and I thought, well, what are the remaining family members going to do? Because in our story, we have proof that there was abuse going on. So it's a little easier for me because I have, I can go back and get the proof. Like we had social workers in. My parents were taken to court on child abuse charges. They were both brought up on charges. They didn't do any time. They were charged with child abuse, and they were told that they had to get mandatory counseling and that social workers would be involved. And so we were allowed to stay in the home, but the social workers did come over, and they did check on us on a regular basis. And so we have proof and records, court records and stuff, so it's easy enough for me to go back and get that information. But for some people, they wouldn't have that proof. Where's the backup? Who's going to believe them? So many times survivors of abuse, they don't have anybody that will validate the abuse, even though there may be somebody in the family that knows about the abuse. They won't validate it and say, yeah, that's what happened. Many times people will actually go the opposite way, and because they don't want to stir things up. They don't want to shake things up. And it's really unfortunate, because the victim is already victim once, and then they're made really a victim again within the system, you know. And it's really a sad situation for so many survivors out there. That's why I do a whole lot of talking on survivor issues and just trying to encourage people, you know, like, do not give up. Do not ever give up. And, you know, we all have rights, you know, child rights. That's why I did a whole lot of work on child abuse prevention and just child abuse in general. Because children have rights, you know, and child abuse is a crime. And it's a crime that should be punished by the law, you know. And so much of it just goes unchecked, under the table, you know, and survive. I know people, I won't disclose any names, but I know people that will never ever see justice. You know, I myself will never see justice for the abuse that was done to me, even though the courts were involved and the system was involved. It doesn't matter. I won't ever see justice. There won't ever be anything done to, you know, in my situation or my sibling's situation for the abuse that we suffered. So, you know, so many times there isn't any real justice, you know, for us. And for me, I mean, I had to sit back and look at it and say, you know what, it's just not going to happen. So my peace and my justice is going public, because I didn't really, you know, as I said, you have to be really careful if you think you might want to go public with your story, and think about the consequences of what it will do to the people around you and what it might cause them to do to you. You have to be really careful. For me, I knew that my siblings that were living, there's only a couple of them left now. I knew that they wouldn't like what I was doing, but I knew that, you know, what are they going to say? All I have to do is go back and get the court records. You know, they can't say, oh, she's lying, or, you know, whatever. It didn't matter to me. I was like, no, I'm telling the truth, and I don't care. The truth hurts, you know. And it is a very painful situation. It really is, because then people look at me like, I've actually had people tell me, well, how could you do that? You know, how could you do that to your parents, no matter how harsh they were to you or how, you know, abusive they were to you? How could you rat them out in public, you know? And that, like, basically making me feel bad. And I was like, no, how could they do that to me? The real true victim here is me, you know, and like the true abusers were them. So all I'm doing is speaking the truth. And the truth hurts sometimes, you know what I mean? And it's unfortunate, because there were some family members who were, not family members, but friends of the family who were really kind of astonished by my coming forward with this and writing my books, A Life of Death, Redemption, La Vida Juvies, and One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, The Journey. And, you know, they didn't like it. They just feel that I'm some sort of a traitor. How could I say these horrible things about my mom especially, and about my dad? But the thing is that whether they knew the abuse was going on or not doesn't really matter. The issue is that it happened, and I have a right to stand up for myself and speak the truth, you know. And so it's hard, you know. It does alienate people. I found that, you know, I did gain a lot by doing it. I gained friends, and I gained some friends, and I gained a lot of support from other survivors, which was very, very helpful. I needed to do it. By staying silent, remaining silent, I was literally going to die. I was dying inside. I really felt like I was dead inside anyway, in my spirit, my soul, and I was just waiting for my physical body to die, you know. And because I didn't want to kill myself, I mean, even though I had a lot of suicidal ideation, I really didn't want to do it. And I thought, that's okay, I'm just going to die in my pain, you know. And it was just such a horrible situation. And I know once I started speaking out, it really gave me a sense of empowerment, because I finally realized that, you know what, I'm no longer under the oppression of my abusers, you know. At the time I started speaking out, I was 40, what was I? That was really public about it, probably about 5-6 years ago. So I would say I was 43. And I mean, the year before that, or 2 years before that, prior to that, I was sitting around wanting to self-injure, and really wanting to hurt myself badly, and tear myself up, and, you know, and then kill myself, and just, you know. And I thought, who's going to win if I do that? My abusers. So, you know, I decided to get help instead, and to move forward, and to try to heal. And I'm so glad that I did, because I win in doing that. I'm the one that wins. You know, by hurting myself, or just remaining silent and allowing them to get away with what they got away with and nobody to know about it, was their victory. But when I went public and then started to reach out and get some help, that's my victory. And so I win this battle. Two of my brothers killed themselves, and it's I was there in the home, and we all grew up in the same home, you know, and they didn't make it. They made the wrong choice. And I mean, I talk a lot about suicide prevention and suicide, and they made the wrong choice, and I knew that, and that's why I kind of didn't want to kill myself. I was like, no, that's the wrong thing to do. But I was in so much pain, so I'm glad I started to reach out, and that's why I wanted to do this show. Just, the courage to stand. It does take a lot of courage. It takes a lot of guts to stand up, because in this process of doing what I'm doing, I've actually developed and sort of made along the way some enemies, and people that don't like my work, and people that don't like what I'm doing. And they don't even appreciate the fact that I'm speaking up and speaking out against child abuse. It's not appreciated at all. There are several people that I could probably list on a list that I know for sure don't like what I'm doing, even though they stand up for child abuse. And it's really stand up against child abuse, I should say, and actually try to, speak out against child abuse. And it's really wrong. My family did that, my siblings. They don't think it's right that I'm doing what I'm doing. But then they didn't think there was anything wrong with the abuse that we suffered either, I mean, they grew up in the same home I did, but they seemed to think it was okay. I talked a lot about that on my shows here, my shows, and they're really rather explicit and graphic. And I mean, if you want to go back and listen to them, you're more than welcome to. I did over 1,000 shows on Blog Talk Radio as well. And, the issue is, they just condoned the abuse, right? And so they didn't like what I was doing by coming out forward publicly about this stuff, and especially when it became, my story, because I mean, really I was just telling my story, but I did tell this family story because I wanted people to see what abuse does to a family and what it'll do, to members in the family. You know what I mean? Each member, all of us suffered, and the family was destroyed. And so, it isn't easy, and there are people that like my work, a lot of people don't, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm not out here. It's not a popularity contest, man. I'm talking. This is life and death stuff. This is serious, really serious stuff. Child abuse is life and death for these children out here. And as a survivor of child abuse, I know. So I thought I have every right to speak out against child abuse, and I have every right to stand up for survivors, and I have every right to support survivors, and every right to support myself as a survivor, and I have every right to speak the truth. And so, in doing so, I mean, it's created some rifts between people, and I've also gained a lot of support from a lot of other people, that support my work and like what I'm doing and appreciate the fact that I'm able to use my voice. I am really grateful, that I can speak about this stuff. At first, I know I've been going back and listening to some of my first Blog Talk Radio shows, and I was so nervous doing those shows. And one of the reasons was because my abuser dad was actually staying with me. He was a really old man at the time, but the thing is that's a few years back. We're going back 5 years. So 5 years ago, he was here living with me for a year till he could get senior housing, because he moved up from the States and he had to wait for a year. And none of my siblings would take him in. My sister wouldn't take him in. My brother wouldn't take him in. They were like, no way, he's insane. He's not coming and living with us for a year, no way. And I said, well, I told my dad, I said, you can come stay with me, but it's just for the year. And, we'll just do the best we can to get along. Because, I mean, we didn't get along. Me and my dad just never got along. And, he was one of my abusers. And, as an adult woman, I'm thinking, well, I can deal with this. I so wanted it to work. I so wanted to have this, was hoping that this relationship, we could mend it, somehow. And he hadn't changed, and I hadn't changed. For him, I was just still this kid that he could just he couldn't beat me up anymore. He's like an 80-something-year-old man. But the thing is he could hurt me still with his words, with his attitudes and his actions in that manner. And I thought, what am I doing? I mean, this is insane. Here's this my abuser living with me. Oh my God. So I mean, I really started my old self from so many years before being abused, really started to realize, like, oh my God, this is not good. And I started to write my blog and went public with my blog because I thought, I need somebody to know what happened to me as a child. I want somebody to know what happened to me, because down the road, nobody's going to know if my crazy old man kills me here in the middle of the night, because he's very sick. He's mentally ill. And I thought, just in case he kills me here in the middle of the night, because he was always wanting to kill me. He wanted to kill all of us, actually, and himself. He was suicidal as well as threatening murder all the time. And, I thought my inner child was just screaming out, living with my abuser dad for a year. So I told him after 1 year. I mean, I was like, no, you got a year, that's it. And he's in a nice place now. He's being very well looked after. But I cut my whole family off after that. After he moved out, I mean, I didn't have that much family left, and we were not really that tight knit. Like I say, abusive families don't generally, not always stick together, right? And my siblings didn't like me, period, anyway, before I started disclosing the abuse, so they really didn't like me after. And I'm like, that's okay, because they never liked me before, and they don't like me now, so what does it matter? What was the loss for me? Absolutely nothing. I mean, one of my sister used to beat me up all the time because my mom was beating me up. So she just thought, hey, my mom beats her, I'll beat her. So my sister was continually beating me up, making me sleep in a corner. I didn't have any clothes. Like it was just absolutely ridiculous. And it was like, oh no, not poor me. But the thing is, I didn't have any support from her the whole time I was growing up. So I figured, what's it going to hurt? I mean, who cares? I don't need these toxic people in my life. And I made the right decision. But the thing is, it's a big decision to make for people. So, I mean, for everybody out there, who's a survivor and who's, you may be listening to this, you may be thinking, I don't know what to do, I mean, this silence is killing me, but I don't know how to get help. You don't necessarily have to go public with your story. I did just because I believe in safety and numbers, and I just wanted the world to know what happened to me. But, some people just prefer to get help, and I know I started going on to anonymous survivor sites, and I found that really helpful. And I was already going public with my stuff, but I still went on these anonymous sites because I really wanted some support from people who knew where I had been, and I knew where they had been and the pain involved. And I thought, I just want to encourage people to get help no matter what it is, if it's, whatever it is, make sure you get some help. We do deserve help. We deserve to succeed. We deserve to have a good life, and especially coming from an abusive childhood, we certainly deserve to have a good life, right? And so, that's a lot of my main messages on my shows over the years have been just that, is to just encourage people to not give up and not become, like re-victimized in the whole thing, and not allow yourself to just sink into this despair. I mean, it's a horrible place to be. And since I started reaching out and telling my story, it empowered me really to move forward, and because it showed me that, yeah, I can do this, and I don't have to let this beat me. I can do this, and it's hard. It's a daily walk, and of course, just say everybody's got troubles in life. I mean, there's not, everybody has problems of some type, and it's like, it's just making the choice, I thought, yeah, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up. I used to stand up as a child. It used to get me in trouble, a lot of trouble, because I used to try to protect my mom from my dad, and it would get me in serious trouble with my dad, and I'd be beaten or thrown across the room, or trying to protect my mom at a young age when I shouldn't have had been doing that. But I took the role on after my brothers moved out and got kicked out and went to Canada. They got kicked out of the country, actually. And so my other sister moved out and got married and moved out. There was just me there. And I shouldn't have had to been dealing with that, trying to keep my dad away from my mom. But my mom was my main abuser, and more so than my dad. But my dad was also abusive. So it's like, the two of them, basically tried to destroy me. Really, it's not like they were just saying to themselves, oh, we'll just destroy our children. They were so selfish and so just into their own hatred that they just passed it on to us, and that we just didn't count in the picture, and so many times, people, they don't know what to do with that, it's like for myself, I suffered for years and years and years because of this stuff, and it's like, I couldn't figure out how to keep going, at all, until at the age of 42, 41, yeah, right in there somewhere, 42, I was like, this has got to change. I just can't keep going this way. I couldn't even figure out how I was going to figure out how to breathe the next couple of hours. I was like, I couldn't even breathe anymore. I was like, I'm just done. And I'm so glad that I reached out and got some help. And that's why I do these shows. It's not for a popularity contest. It's not to make friends. And it's certainly not to try to gain something for myself. I mean, I'm just putting myself out here for people and my own situation just so that people will know to reach out and get some help. You know, my two brothers killed themselves. They didn't get any help. And my other siblings, they'll never get any help because they'll never speak up. They'll never speak out against it. And it's like, you know, for me, I thought, no, I'm gonna speak out against what I know is completely wrong. You know, we certainly didn't deserve to be abused like nobody does. I don't care what kind of a situation it is. You know, domestic violence, bullying. You know, I don't care what it is. You know, child abuse of any type. It's all wrong. And we, as survivors, have rights. You know, and I have a right to protection. I have a right to good life, and I have the right to heal. You know, but it takes courage to stand up. And just to make that one step to say, you know what, I need help. Like, it is so hard to ask for help, especially for survivors, you know. And like, I mean, yeah, I mean, so many of us have come from this background, and I know that there's people listening that know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not easy to ask for help, especially coming from an abusive background. Being abused and battered, and you know, it's a hard thing to do, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. I finally reached out and got some help, and now I'm like, I know I can do this, you know, because I proved to myself that I can do this. I can get help, I can make it through, and you know, that's why I do these shows. I mean, I've got a limited amount of years left here on the planet, and I thought, you know, while I have time here to do this and I'm able to speak out and speak up, that I would encourage people to, you know, to stand and get help for yourself, no matter what help it is. You make sure you reach out and get help, and don't allow yourself to suffer in silence and suffer on your own. You know, there's great resources out there. You just have to start looking around and make sure that you are looking out for yourself and not be re-victimized by people. You have rights. You do have a right to stand up for yourself. And, you know, survivors of abuse quite often don't realize that. We do have rights. We have the right to a good life. And it does take some courage to stand. But I'm telling you, keep standing and keep standing and keep standing. And do not ever give up the fight. Have a great night, everybody. I'm going to play fragments of A Broken Dream by The Deliverance. And we'll talk to you real soon.